Good evening and welcome to my session. So this is Mrs. Gomati Nagajyoti from Dr. MGR Educational and Research Institute, Maduravayal, Chennai, and I am representing the Department of Civil Engineering for the subject Water Supply and Sanitary Engineering. So I am going to deal with Unit 3, Sewage Treatment, and the topic is Introduction. So the major focus for today's session is what is wastewater and how and where do we get it out. And we are also going to deal with some small community wastewater treatment systems, the STP layouts and few examples. Wastewater by its definition is any water that has been contaminated by human waste. It is simply a used water from any combination of domestic, industrial, commercial or agricultural activities. It may be from surface runoff or from stormwater and from any sewer inflow or sewer infiltration. Therefore, wastewater is a byproduct of domestic, industrial, commercial or agricultural activities in simple words. The categories of wastewater includes domestic wastewater resulting from the household activities, municipal wastewater from communities, and this wastewater is also called as sewage, and the other type of wastewater includes industrial wastewater from industrial activities like production, processing, etc. Any wastewater can contain physical, chemical or biological pollutants individually or in combination. So going to the background, we know the more water you have, the more wastewater we generate. In the past itself, Roman knew that water carried away the smell, so they have suggested some tips that water can carry away the foul smell resulting from the waste. And we also know that if water is not available, then wastewater is not generated. There is no other substance that can transport waste like water. As we know, water cleans the inside of our body, it cleans the outside of our body, it carries away our metabolic waste. So in high population densities like metropolitan cities or highly populated cities, water is the best means to collect and transport wastewater. So what is our chore to get these waste out of water? Do you think it is very difficult to get waste out of water? My answer would be yes. Technically it is yes. We have lots and lots of processes and many systems involved. But as we know, we have a lot of help available to us from the nature. And when we look back or look at our natural systems, we have a team that includes gravity and the sun. Those are the main drivers of the hydrological cycle. And there are billions of microorganisms which acts as the ultimate decomposers. And the soil, of course, the basis for all wastewater treatment. So from this we can understand the nature helps us in naturally decaying the waste which is produced. But only when the amount of waste is very less, only the nature can accommodate the amount of waste and it can do something about for its reclamation. When it comes to the wastewater, by weight, it it composed of 99.9% water, and it is the 0.1% that we have to concentrate for its removal. And do you know that 0.1% contains organic matters, microorganisms and inorganic compounds? And when coming to the microorganisms, a few of which are very pathogenic as we are dealing with the metabolic waste from human or animal. So the point of interest in dealing with the wastewater are given here. We have the oxygen demand, the indicator organisms and the solids. As we know, the solids removal is one of the major thing which we do in wastewater treatment. So the total suspended solids which is present and the total dissolved solids which is present, or together we can say the total solids which is present in the wastewater. So there are some indicator organisms which tells us the water is potable or the end usage of the wastewater. So the fecal coliform and the E. coli are the indicator organisms which says whether the water can be used or not. And we have the oxygen demand. So this topic we will be dealing in detail in the secondary treatment processes. So we have two types of oxygen demand. One is the biochemical oxygen demand, which is called as BOD, and this next one is chemical oxygen demand, which is called as COD. At the global level, if we talk about the wastewater generation, around 80% of wastewater is produced. It is just like that discharged into the environment untreated, and thereby causing widespread water pollution. So this is at the global level. Depending on the type and extent of contamination, wastewater can be treated in wastewater treatment plants, which includes physical, chemical and biological treatment processes. Municipal wastewater is treated in sewage treatment plants, which is abbreviated as STPs, and the industrial wastewater is treated in industrial wastewater treatment plants, which is called as ETPs, which deals with effluents. In 2019, the sewage generation in India was given as 61,754 MLD in total, and out of which 38,791 MLD of untreated sewage was reported, and we could only treat 22,963 MLD of water only. So out of this much we can able to treat only this much, or we are treating only this much. So this picture gives us the sewage generation in India state-wise. So with a 13% of sewage generation, Maharashtra stands in the first place and Tamil Nadu stands in the third place with a 9% of sewage generation in 2019, as given by the order of the National Green Tribunal regarding effluent discharge standards for STPs, dated 30th April 2019. When we come to the definition of sewage, it is for only today's purpose water that has constituents of human and or animal metabolic waste, and those waters that has the residuals from cooking, cleaning or bathing activities are called as sullage. Thus the municipal wastewater or the domestic wastewater is the combination of sewage and sullage. And as we discussed earlier, the sewage contains the metabolic waste and the sullage contains the waste which results from the human activities other than metabolic waste. So the sewage contains pathogenic microorganisms. So our focus is wastewater that comes from a home. So this is the overview of domestic sewage treatment on a high level. So we know the sewage from each and every house or from a community is being collected through a conveyance system, and this water will ends up in the wastewater treatment plant, or simply called as STP in case of domestic sewage treatment. So these waters from the treatment plant enters into the screening stage, in which the coarser particles are screened out, and from the screening stage it enters into the primary treatment stage, in which the floating matters, the grits and the oil and grease can be removed from this stage. So this stage is called as the preliminary or primary treatment stage, and from the primary treatment the wastewater enters into the secondary treatment stage, in which the microorganisms are helping the processes. And from the secondary treatment stage, after disinfection, the wastewater enters into the final treatment stage if needed, and then it is discharged into the environment. So we know there are some operations and processes in sewage treatment, and this may be the simplest wastewater treatment flow chart. So the wastewater from the houses are collected and it enters into the wastewater treatment plant. So the water which is entering into the wastewater treatment plant is called as the influent. So this influent first enters into the first chamber, which is called as the screen chamber, in which normally a bar screen is used to get rid of the floatable matters or other solid matters which is present. And those particles which are not collected through screen chamber and has some more density are collected in the grit removal chamber, in which the inorganic materials like the soil, clay, stones, etc. can be collected in this. So till this chamber, the treatment process is called as primary treatment. So after this, the sewage enters into the secondary treatment, in which two types may be involved. One is the aerobic treatment and the other one is the anaerobic treatment. Usually for a community water treatment process, we use aerobic treatment process. So according to this diagram, we have an extended aeration basin, which is simply called as activated sludge process, and from this the water enters to the secondary clarifier, in which all the solid particles can be collected. This is simply a sedimentation tank, and after this microfilters will be used to filter out those particles which has escaped from the secondary clarifier. From then the disinfection process to the reclamation ponds or to the environment. So on the other hand, the solids which are withdrawn from the aeration basin, the secondary clarifier, these solids are dewatered and they are disposed of in a safe manner. So the solids collected are disposed after some treatment process that we will see in the coming slides. So this is a very typical example of how a community treatment process occurs. So assume this is your home. So the waste water from the home enters to the pumping station. So the need of a pumping station basically depends upon the topography of your area, and the pumping station pumps out the water to the wastewater treatment plant, in which the first treatment unit is the screens, and then the grit removal, and then the sedimentation tanks or the settling basins we call. So till these three processes are called as primary treatment, and after this sedimentation tanks, the water enters into the trickling filter or the aeration tanks. These treatment units are called as aeration, aerobic treatment processes, and after these processes the water will be given some rest in the clarifiers, in which all the solid particles can be given time to settle down. So after the water from the clarifiers may be let out into the oxidation ponds, or it can be directly let out to the ocean outfall or a river outfall or any environment. So these processes will produce some waste. Those waste are called as sludge, and these sludge collected from the sedimentation tank, the trickling filter, aeration tank, clarifiers, all these sludge will be collected, and these sludge enters into the sludge digestion chamber, so in which the sludge will be given some treatment, thereby the sludge will be dewatered and disinfected, and then it is dried. So the sludge becomes now the fertilizer. On the other hand, this process produces some gases, and these gases will be collected, and those gases are called as biogas, which is used in the power generation. And the fertilizers may be used for the land remediation or for any agricultural purposes or for any domestic purposes based on the need. Again, this is the same kind of an explanation but with a different presentation. As we see, there is a need of a pumping station, screens, grit chamber, sedimentation, trickling filters, aeration tanks, clarifiers, and treated wastewater, disinfection here, and then the sludge removal here, and these treated sludge will be removed to the agricultural field or to the landfills for its decomposition. And this is another way of representing. So this picture basically deals with, it is a diagrammatic representation with some details. So the wastewater collected from the homes and offices are entering into the screen chamber, in which you could see some particles, bigger particles, smaller floatable matters, which are collected through the bar screens, and the particles which are heavy and denser are escaping from the bar screens, which can be collected in the grit tank. So from the grit tank, some particles which are having less density and suspended organic matters are collected in the settling tank. So till this, the process is called as primary treatment, and after this the sewage enters into the aeration tank, in which the secondary treatment starts. And the secondary treatment, this is an activated sludge process in which the microorganisms which help in changing the solids into three phases. One is the solid phase, liquid phase, and the gaseous phase. So the gas will escape to the atmosphere, and the liquid can be collected in the clarifier, and the solids can be collected in the sludge digester. So once the detention time is over in the clarifier, these waters will be disinfected using chlorine or UV, and then these waters can be stored or discharged into the environment, maybe a river outfall or an ocean or a sea or something like that. So in all the activities, the solids are collected, and these solids will end up in the sludge digestion tank. So as we discussed earlier, the sludge will be digested and managed and may end up as a fertilizer in the agricultural field, or if it is really pathogenic or some kind of pathogens presence will be advised for incineration process, or if it is a managed sludge, it can be deposited or thrown in the landfills. And this is a typical water treatment process which is done in Washington, DC. So from the sewer system, sewage enters into the bar screen, and then after the bar screen, the grit removal, and here we can see the diagrammatic representation, the amount of solids which are available or which are removed. So in the settling tank, almost all the solids are settling here, and in the biological treatment, almost the water gets cleared. So just by some activity, so these sludges are collected, and then water will be removed from there, and some disinfection is done to kill the bacteria, and then it can be used as fertilizers in the farm. And here the clear water will be pumped, and there may be sand filters used for the tertiary treatment process, and then the water is disinfected, and the water can be reused or disposed of in a different environment. So from these details we can understand the stages in sewage treatment are preliminary treatment, primary treatment, secondary treatment, and tertiary treatment. So the preliminary treatment will use a core screen as shown in the figure. It is just like a screen which can filter out the bigger floating particles. And in the primary treatment, we have the medium and the fine screens, grit removal, oil and grease removal through scum tank, and coagulation, flocculation, and primary sedimentation. The secondary treatment involves aeration through activated sludge process or trickling filters and other anaerobic and biological treatment units like oxidation ponds, stabilization ponds, USAB, etc. So the tertiary treatment is needed whenever the water is going to be reused for some other purpose, maybe an industrial activity or for washing or something like that, which aims at reducing the solids in the wastewater as well as reducing the pathogenic microorganisms in the water. So the tertiary treatment processes may be nutrient removal or maybe phosphorus removal, etc., depending upon the end user. So this is these two are typical outfalls. So this outfall is without a screen and this outfall is with a screen. So there are some floating matters present in. So these floating matters, if not screened and the wastewater is let out in any environment, this causes pollution. So there is a core screen provided at every outfall to reduce the solid matters in the environment, which ultimately causes maybe water pollution or a soil pollution. So this is a typical bar screen and this is a bar screen too. So the bar screen, as we have discussed, can be inclined to the designed degree with whatever we designed. And those particles which are filtered out are called as screenings. So you could see some screenings present in the bar screen in this picture. And this is a typical bar screen which has very less spacings in between, and this is a domestic treatment unit in which bar screen, mechanical cleaning bar screen is used. And these are all the filtered out matters from the bar screens. And as we discussed the stages of sewage treatment, we have the other kind of diagrammatic representation in which pre-treatment or the preliminary treatment happens, and after which the secondary treatment happens through aeration and secondary treatment unit, and then the sludge which is collected or digested, and then biogas production is aimed or the fertilizer can be produced. That depends upon the amount of the sludge produced and the facilities which we have. And this is a aerial view of a wastewater treatment plant. You can able to visualize the clarifiers here. There is a set of a clarifier and here is another set of clarifier. So this is primary clarifiers and these are secondary clarifiers, and these are aeration tanks, and there may be many units involved, so that is understandable after we complete all the processes, unit operations and processes in sewage treatment. So this is a simple layout of wastewater treatment plant. So this is a line diagram. So the influent from the source enters into the primary treatment, and from the primary treatment the primary effluent enters into the secondary treatment, and on the other hand the primary sludge enters into the sludge digestion chamber, and the secondary treatment results in secondary effluent and secondary sludge. The sludge is collected again here and the secondary effluent enters into the advanced treatment or the tertiary treatment, and from the tertiary treatment the tertiary effluent is let out to the receiving environment, maybe a land or a pond or a river or an ocean. So this is more technical than the previous slide. So in which the wastewater enters into the screens and then to the grit removal chamber and then to the primary clarifier and then the aeration tank and then the secondary clarifier. Filtration happens and then disinfection. The effluent is let out to the environment or for the storage. So the collected solids are represented as here. So these solids will be collected. The sludge will be thickened first, dewatered, dried, and then biosolids are produced which can be used as fertilizers. And this is the layout of Nessapakkam sewage treatment plant located in Chennai, Tamil Nadu. So the typical plant diagram is given, in which the water enters into the inlet chamber, and then from the inlet the water enters to the screen chamber. As we discussed in the real-time class, there can be a balancing tank which balances the rate of the flow of sewage. So after the screen chamber, it enters into the detritus, which is called as the grit chamber otherwise. So after the grit chamber, the water enters into the primary clarifier feed chamber. So from this feed chamber, the effluent will be fed into the primary clarifiers. So from the primary clarifier, the water enters into the secondary treatment. So till this, the primary treatment happens. That means screen chamber is provided, grit chamber is provided, and then primary clarifiers are provided. So there are 3 aeration tanks provided, and these 3 aeration tanks do the activated sludge process, and from the 3 tanks the water enters into the secondary clarifier feeding chamber, and this chamber feeds the clarifiers, secondary clarifiers. So from the clarifiers the water can enter to the disinfection chamber and then to the outfall, and all the return sludge from the aeration tank, from the primary clarifier, from the secondary clarifier enters into the sludge pump house. So this pump house pumps the sludge to the primary sludge digester and then to the secondary sludge digester. So the sludge digestion taking place in 2 stages, the primary digester and secondary digester. And then from the secondary digestion, the sludge enters into the sludge drying bed. So after drying for number of days, fertilizers or biosolids can be produced. So this is the typical treatment which is happening in Nesapakam sewage treatment plant. And the next topic, secondary treatment of sewage, will be dealt in a different video. Until that, if you have any questions, please contact me through Google Classroom. So thank you for your patient listening.